Good evening and welcome. My name is Charles Stang. I have the privilege of serving as the director of the Center for the Study of World Religions. And before we get started, I would like to ask all of us to take a moment to silence our cell phones. So let's just take a moment, find that little button, and make sure that we don't hear whatever tune you've chosen in the next several hours. Thank you for that. So, as I said, it is my great privilege to serve as the director of the Center for the Study of World Religions at Harvard Divinity School. So welcome to Harvard, and welcome to the Science Center. The Science Center is actually designed by the same architect, Joseph Sert, who designed our Center for the Study of World Religions on Francis Avenue. We look forward to welcoming you to the Divinity School proper tomorrow morning, to its newly renovated Schwartz Hall, and to our conference room named after William James, the pioneering psychologist and philosopher and contemporary of the remarkable man who brings us together this evening, George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, who could also be said to be a pioneering psychologist and philosopher. So we're here to celebrate a centenary, the 100th anniversary of Gurdjieff's visit to the United States. In 1924, he arrived with 23 of his pupils to perform demonstrations of the movements in New York City, Chicago, and Boston. Media coverage of the event here in Boston included Harvard's own student newspaper, The Crimson, which on February 27th quoted A.R. Orage as the representative of Gurdjieff's Institute for the Harmonious Development of Man, quoting him now, "The Institute conducts, along with its other activities, a set of special exercises which we call movement, but which appear as dances." Mr. Gurdjieff didn't invent the dances, but discovered them. They consist of ancient Greek, Egyptian, Buddhist, and early Christian sacred classics, 4,000 all told. Another Crimson story published on the same day announces, quote, "It's obvious that the success of this institution would largely affect the future of the world." Goes on to say, "If Mr. Gurdjieff can manage to corral all the Germans, most of the Russians, and a fair share of the English, French, and even Americans into his academy, then the 4,000 classic dances will produce a pan-terrestrial heaven of sublime and perfect accord." I see some head shaking and some chuckling. Let me just repeat that phrase again. A pan-terrestrial heaven of sublime and perfect accord. That's probably some Harvard undergraduate English major. To be perfectly candid, and speaking now for the CSWR leadership, we do not expect tomorrow to be a pan-terrestrial heaven of sublime and perfect accord. And to be honest, we'll be very disappointed if it does, because then we will have failed in our mission. This 100-year anniversary gives us the occasion, and maybe even the mandate, to reflect on Gurdjieff's long legacy, how it has grown and evolved since 1924, and influenced so many other movements, social, spiritual, and creative. This team, this partnership, about which I'll say more, has sought to bring together scholars and practitioners, and a fair number of scholar practitioners, those who are a part of and apart from Gurdjieff's lineage, perhaps those who don't often engage with each other's work, written or otherwise, and those who may not often attend the same events. The aim is in keeping with the CSWR's founding mission, to promote the sympathetic study of religion and spirituality, to create the conditions for the critical and constructive exploration and dialogue among those with different points of view. In other words, let's not be afraid to disagree tomorrow, but let's also not be afraid to learn from one another or to try on a challenging idea or perspective. Let's try to earn whatever accord we are afforded tomorrow, and it needn't be sublime, perfect, or pan-terrestrial. So yes, we are here to celebrate an important centenary. We are also here to celebrate a collaboration, a partnership between the CSWR at Harvard Divinity School and the foundations and societies that make up Gurdjieff's rich legacy. Two in particular. First, our local partner, the Gurdjieff Society of Massachusetts. I'd like to give special thanks to Cynthia Reeves, Charles Langmuir, and Roger Lipsey for helping us envision and give shape to this unique gathering. Second, to our overseas partner, the International Association of Gurdjieff Foundations, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome and a special note of gratitude to Alexander de Salzman, the president of that association, and the Institute G.I. Gurdjieff in Paris. Thank you all very much for your leadership, collegiality, and generosity. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank my colleagues from the CSWR. First, my two co-hosts, Professor Carole Cusack and Gosha Skladowska. Carole Cusack is Professor of Religious Studies at the University of Sydney and visiting scholar at the CSWR this past semester. She is our resident expert on the teachings and legacy of Gurdjieff. Carole trained as a medievalist, but her more recent work focuses on new religious movements and contemporary trends, especially in Western esotericism. Carole has organized two previous symposia on Gurdjieff, one in March of 2007 in Tbilisi, Georgia. 2007? No, 17? Well, sorry. I'm just crediting it to Carole. There was a symposium in Tbilisi, Georgia. Apparently, Carole didn't organize it. Maybe some of you were there. I think I'm right in saying that you did organize the December 2019 symposium in Sydney. It would be awkward if you didn't. That was you. Now, both of those symposia serve as models for what we want to accomplish with this gathering, especially the one Carole organized. In this past semester, Carole has led, along with Roger Lipsey, a biweekly reading group on Gurdjieff here at the center and has also organized a series of workshops on the movements. I'm enormously grateful to you, Carole, for your expertise, leadership, collegiality, dedication, and good humor. We will miss you, and we welcome you back anytime you wish. Gosha Skladowska is the executive director of the CSWR, and to her is due a kind of gratitude for which I cannot easily find words. And so I'm going to borrow an old technique from mystical theology and speak in the negative. If it were not for Gosha, we would not be here. The idea for this collaborative conference goes back before Gosha's time with the CSWR, but were it not for her, that idea would never have matured, unfolded, or become real on whatever numbered world it is we are currently inhabiting. Thank you for that joke. I mean, for laughing at my terrible joke. This collaboration, to be honest, has not always been easy. This is logistically also difficult. It's the largest conference we've ever hosted. This has been a difficult event to plan and pull off. And it has demanded much of many people. And no one has had more demands made on her and her time than Gosha. And she has shouldered them with grace, grit, and a very good sense of humor. So please join me in giving her a round of applause. And shoulder to shoulder with Gosha has been the other amazing members of the CSWR team, who are probably going to make themselves scarce right at the moment when I want to acknowledge them. Laurie Sedgwick, are you in the room? No doubt doing something important. Laurie, you'll have to hear this later. You are a delight to work with and an absolute pillar of poise. Bashwar Khan, Sarah Ayanati, I know how much of yourself you've poured into this event in recent months, and I'm grateful beyond measure. It is a privilege and an honor to work with this team, and I want us all to take a moment to thank them heartily with another round of applause. Please join me. And to all the other CSWR affiliates, students, researchers, faculty, residents, and volunteers, I welcome you as well. It gives me great pleasure to see familiar faces in this crowd, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome new faces. So to those of you who have traveled from afar to be here, and I know some of you have traveled from very far, I close by welcoming you again and with special emphasis. Thank you for coming all this way, giving all this time to this unique collaboration. And now, I want to give the floor to someone very special who has also traveled very far to be with us and whose presence whose presence lends this gathering a special gravity and significance. Please join me in welcoming President Alexander de Salzman to the podium.
It's very short. Just in case. Thank you very much, really, to offer this trip, this coming to your continent. What we know is that Mr. Gurdjieff liked to come to the United States. He found people here were somehow open-minded. They didn't have the weight of the past of European history in terms of being maybe more prone to ask themselves what life is about, maybe. So I think that's why he enjoyed very much coming here. So it's true, we'll approach tomorrow this man and his teaching from different angles, different points of view, different approaches, scientific maybe, theoric, or more practic, or every side of incredible man. And maybe with different opinions, as you said, and this is quite all right. As long as, we share honestly what we all feel. After all, it's our decision to place ourselves under an influence or another. It means we have this choice. Because it has a direct action on us. Some people sometimes say we are far from the source. 100 years, he said. In fact, no. No, we're not. The minute we're really present to what is, we can say we're with him, and the source is there, not so far. So before all the books, this was part of an oral tradition. And the conference is also an oral sharing. So that's very important to have this opportunity. So it's my turn to welcome Professor Carole Cusack, and let us continue.
It's a pleasure to be here. I come also from a long, long way away, but I've been here for almost 4 months and can testify that the intellectual climate, the openness, the possibilities of the Center for the Study of World Religions at Harvard are, well, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much limitless. And I think it's because Charles and Gosha can think in that way about horizons that haven't been plumbed or reached yet. That's why we are here, and it's why resources have been devoted towards this very impressive conference. I was sorry to interrupt Charles about the Tbilisi conference, but I know that Connie Jones is here, and she edited the conference proceedings. And also because I'm part of a global scholarly community, and some people in this room may also be, I'd like to draw attention to the fact that the person who organized that was our friend, Pierluigi Zoccatelli, and he died this year. So we are remembering and honoring his achievement in having created the first conference on Gurdjieff that was an academic meeting at which practitioners and scholars came together and produced some really interesting material. I might point out there, too, Gurdjieff would be interested, because he was always concerned with the material question, that Pierluigi lobbied and managed to get the Italian consulate in Tbilisi to fund the conference, which I thought, that's quite an achievement. When I was thinking about what to say to you tonight, I was thinking about the word conference. The Latin root confere means to bring together. But by the time it entered medieval French, it meant specifically a kind of conversation, a kind of talking together. And from that, I was thinking, well, where can we go with talking? I think sometimes when scholars and practitioners come together, the question of doing versus the talking gets to get weighed rather differently, depending on which part of the equation you are belonging to. And I thought about Farid al-Din Attar, the Persian Sufi poet, who wrote a great work called The Conference of the Birds, the Mantek al-Tayr, which I think many of you will know. Anyway, it was written around about 1177, and it was the culmination of his lifetime of collecting Sufi sayings and anecdotes from Sufis that he met, and the fictional structure that he gave the poem was that the birds, who stand in for the Sufis, are seeking the phoenix so that they can invite the phoenix to become their king. And they have to go on a long and arduous quest in order to find the phoenix. But of course, the simorgh, the Persian word for phoenix, when those few exhausted birds finally encounter him, has a countenance that reflects rather than perhaps radiates. And the Sufis who arrive, the birds who are there at the end of the quest, realize that they have found themselves. There is no need, really, to invite the phoenix to become king, because they already hold, treasure, have all the things that the phoenix might have. Now, when I was thinking about the Conference of the Birds, I thought about two ways that it might be relevant to what we're going to do tomorrow. The first is that all life is a kind of quest, and it may be that we don't know what phoenix we are seeking or we intend to have an encounter with. Nevertheless, at some point, where we are will be where that experience is. Now, in a very Christian Orthodox context, Farid al-Din Attar's Sufi allegory reads very true anyway, because the idea of human spiritual development as culminating in theosis, in coming so close to the divine that the space between the human and the divine dissolves in a way, I'm afraid, that the Roman Catholicism of my upbringing would never have permitted, but which, since I have become more aware of Orthodox traditions, seems to me to be particularly significant and important. The other thing I took away from the Conference of the Birds is that it is a conference. It's a very large poem in which a lot of people speak and share opinions about what it means to be seeking the phoenix, the Simurgh, and what it will mean when he is found. Tomorrow, we're taking part in an engagement. It's a particular kind of engagement. And I believe that the academic life is a kind of vocation. I'm always a bit tentative about using the word spiritual, but it most certainly is transformative. And what we've aimed here, with Charles as an incredibly generous host, the Gurdjieff Society of Massachusetts is very active partners, and as much as we possibly can with academics around the world, is to create something that is a space where opinions that differ may be aired, information that may be partial or proprietal to one or other group can be made available, where the best kind of sharing of what it sounds perhaps a little pretentious to call wisdom, but I'm sure a lot of people in the audience here would accord that particular very powerful term to the body of knowledge held by the people maybe that you've come here to hear. I believe that what will come out of tomorrow is something like a scientific chemical chain reaction or physics chain reaction, where we will bounce off each other. We will open possibilities that perhaps nobody has considered. I really hope that that's what's going to happen. I feel like the 4 months I've had here, that's what we're actually building towards. So I think tomorrow we make history. And that's a trivial kind of statement. But the conference my dear late friend Pierluigi organized in 2007, the conference I organized in 2019, they were like our event, one day where all of the really powerful stuff was put together. But they were tiny compared to what we have been able to bring here. And that means the impact must be greater. Even if only 10% of people in attendance take away something that changes the way they think, the way they want to live, the things they want to devote themselves to, then we will have succeeded.